Hello world! Wave Time here, bringing to you part 2 of our Mobile Quarry Mark IV tutorial. Now this part is going to be focusing on all of the code that will be required to run this huge operation. Now, just so you know, if you want to see the physical part and have not due to, I don't know, maybe you misplaced yourself or you're just having like a little oops, I'm in the wrong place, make sure to check that part first before we actually go into coding. It features all of the physical build and, just for fun, shows how to start that off. Okay, let's get started and see if I don't royally screw up. To start off with, you're going to need your 4th boot disk. It's an easy thing to make. All you need to do is get a regular blank floppy, and a regular blank floppy is made like that, and then add 1 redstone to it, and it's a shapeless recipe. Just throw it into your disk drive, go to your computer, and press the start button. It should boot up because of the red light, and then we'll be ready to code. Now I'm going to try to explain every word, which is the commands, as much as I can, and we'll see how that goes. So after it's booted up, take that out, put in a blank floppy disk, right in there. You can save this for some other time, but it doesn't really matter. It can just take up space for the time being. Haha, take that space. Okay, now let's actually start coding. As you can see, it sees our RAM module because it is greater than 8192. What it is normally is 600 bytes, and that is because there's only 600 bytes on the normal boot disk free without a RAM module. So first things first is we're going to have to get this up and running without the Quarry program. The Quarry program is a separate entity that has to be programmed in after you get the initial movements of this system done. So first we're going to work on the calibration system, and we're going to be working on how to make sure that this system knows where it is at any particular time. So let's start. We're going to need to declare a variable. To do that, what you do is type in variable, a space, and then the variable name. So our first one is current x. Then you hit enter. Then we'll put another variable called current y and a variable current z. Okay, that's good. Now we're going to calibrate. We're going to make the word or the program called calibrate. So you do a colon, space, calibrate, and press enter. When you finish, it'll put it into compile word. So it basically what happens is that when you do this colon, space, then a word, and press enter, it'll put it in compile mode, and then you type, and until you get to the semicolon, that's what's in the word. So let's start. What we're going to have is that it'll calibrate it by going X, Y, and Z by taking your coordinates that are on your side of the screen. So what we'll do is, because of the order, we have to assign current Z the first number that we get. Because this is a stack-based program, stack-based meaning that when we enter a number, say we enter the X, it'll go on the top of the stack. Then we put on Y, it'll go on top of that. And then when we finally put on Z, it'll go on top of that. Now when we assign a variable that number, what it does is consumes the Z first, then it consumes the Y, then it consumes the X when you finally do that. So with that in mind, what this does is we'll type in the number X, Y, and Z, then we type in calibrate afterwards. So current Z consumes it first, so current Z space exclamation mark assigns the number that's in front of current Z that value. Okay, and then we'll take current y, and that gets consumed and placed into the variable current y. And finally, we take current x. So that final value gets placed into current x. Then we press enter, semicolon, and then we finish the calibrate word. As you see, it's no longer in compile mode. So what we want to do is calibrate it. So we're at y equals 93, and you can take any point, but I'm going to take the center of the quarry, so 367, negative 323. So 367, 93, negative 323, negative 323, negative 323, and then when we type in calibrate, what it will do is assign those coordinates to the system. Now it knows where it is, but then it's going to have to do something with that, so now we're going to do a few things. We need to get the word called inverse in. Inverse basically means if you have a Boolean, which is true or false, it switches that statement. So if you put in true and then do inverse, it'll return false. Likewise, if you put in false and then use inverse, it'll return true. So what we do is check if it's true, which is negative 1. If it is, it will then put out false, which is 0. Otherwise, meaning if it was false, it'll turn it true. So what I just did was an if, else, then statement. It takes a Boolean, whether it's true or false, that's in front of the if, and if it's true, it does the first thing until it gets to the else. If there's no else and it's then, it just does whatever it is, and then if it's false, it'll skip it. Otherwise, if there is an else in it, and the Boolean in front of if is false, it'll go to what's after else, or rather, what's between else and then. So for instance, let's demonstrate it. Let's put true and inverse it. To see what's at the top of the stack, we do a period, and see that is false. Now if we do 0 inverse, or false inverse, we should get true, which works. Now if we do 0 inverse inverse, it'll either spaz out or give us a 0. See? Okay, now let's clear that by doing page, and we'll have a blank screen. Next, we'll do two variables. Variable delay and variable L delay. L delay. Wahaha. Okay, now we'll just assign these variables numbers. So for instance, for delay, we'll assign 20. And for L delay, we'll assign 10 rather. Good. Now we're going to do a nice word that will be very crucial into your understanding. We're going to be making the word called light. So what it will do is scan the system and check whether the light sensor is on. If the light sensor is on, meaning it's daylight, it won't add any extra delay to the movement. If it's off though, it'll do a delay. So let's compile light. So we have to read what the IO expander is reading, and to do that, we do IOX at. So that gets a number, and then we have to compare it to the blue wire. The blue wire, if we pull NEI up, we have to count. These increment by a multiple of 2. So we go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5112, 1024, 2048. So blue wire is 248. So we scan, check if it's 248. So by doing AND, this basically sees if the blue wire is on. If the blue wire is on, we'll just check it for fun to make sure that we return a Boolean. 2048 equals. So if the blue wire is on, we'll then do an if statement. So now what follows is what happens if the blue wire is on. If the blue wire is on, it means that it's light time, so we don't actually do anything. So we'll just do 0 drop. Drop basically takes the number at the top of the stack and takes it off. So we put 0 on the top of the stack and then take it off. Basically, it's a do nothing thing. But otherwise, we'll add a delay of L.delay. So we have to take the variable out of L.delay, or rather see it, and we do that by doing the @ sign after a space after our variable. So L.delay at actually gives us 10 in this case, and we do a delay by doing ticks. So what this will do is when it returns false, it'll wait 10 ticks. So then we just do then to end off that if statement and a semicolon to end. Now let's have a little fun and actually program in the movements. First we'll do positive x. Positive x in this case, let's do lowercase. Positive x is in this direction, which if we take a quick look for our contraption, at least if we look into the internal workings, it's this engine and it's the white wire. White happens to be our number 1. White is 1 in the hierarchy of all of the wires. So what we do is do 1 IOX set. So we set it, wait 8 ticks, then we reset that number. Now we do a delay of delay ticks. So this will wait 20 ticks. And then we'll do a subsequent delay that basically delays it if it's raining. If it's raining, this doesn't receive any sort of power. Likewise, if it's nighttime, the solar panels don't receive any power and don't charge the frame motors as quickly. So if we don't add this during the rain, it's a possibility that they could completely stall out and not receive power quickly enough. So we'll then wait light, so we'll check whether we have to or not. And now here's the fun part. What we're going to do is, since we went in the positive x direction, we'll increase current x by 1. We'll do this by taking 1, typing out the variable name, current x, and by doing a fun word, which is plus exclamation mark, what it'll do is add to current x 1. So in the variable, it'll add 1 to it. So then we do the semicolon to close it off, and then we have plus x. So let's test that. Works like a charm. Now we'll have to get it in the other direction. We do negative x. Negative x, because of how we set it up, is the orange wire, which is 2. So we do 2 IOX set, 8 ticks, 2 IOX reset, delay at ticks, light, and since we're going minus x, we subtract 1, so do negative 1, current x plus exclamation mark, and now when we do that, it'll move back to where it was. So pretty much what we're going to do now is add every single word for the direction. So we have plus x and we have minus x. You have to then look at your wires and see which way it takes them. So this one, the magenta, which is number 4 in the hierarchy, brings it that direction, which is minus z. Otherwise, the light blue moves it in that direction, which is positive z. Finally, we have yellow, which moves it up, or plus y, and we have lime that moves it down, which is minus y. by basically repeating the same process and by having a little fun by, you know, changing the current x to current z if it's moving in those directions, this way or this way, and having it current y if it's moving up and down, we'll be able to have this query working well. Now, we're going to add a slight delay to the up one. We need to do that because, it could be a little disastrous in the fact that since it's connected to, well, air quotations, an external power source, it might not recharge as quickly as the other systems. So we'll just add a variable, which is delay up, and just in case we'll add a variable for delay down. We can tweak these afterwards, but we'll both assign them 10 for now. So I'll do the assigning, and then I'll write down the plus z minus z and plus y minus y. Then I'll show you the results. Okay, now I have the plus z minus z plus y and minus y all coded. Let's just test them by doing a little movement. So plus z minus z plus y minus y. So it should move forward, then move back, raise, then lower. Move forward, move back, raise, and have a bit longer of a delay, then move down. Then it's good. Okay, now we can have the fun stuff. Now you're probably wondering why we have, coordinate system if we can't use them. Here's the thing, we can use them. It's just going to take a bit of a long word. So let's write go to. What go to will do is take in an x and a z coordinate and then go to that location depending on where your calibration is set to. So let's try. So first thing that's consumed is the z. We have to compare it to the current z by doing the current z at and subtracting the two. Then we duplicate the numbers so that they can be used in a variety of operations. For instance, we have to check if it's equal to 0. If it is not equal to 0, we know that it's good to actually do loops with them. So if, then continue. Now what we do is we compare to see if it's greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, we will then take the remaining number that we have, the final duplication, and we do something called a do loop. So what we do is we have a number, which is the finishing number, then a 0, which is the starting number, then we do, and what happens between do and loop, thus the word do loop, is what gets repeated how many times the starting number is. So this thing we do plus z. So we go in the z direction, in the positive z direction a number of times, and then we loop that. Otherwise, so our else statement, so if it's not greater than 0, we have to multiply that number by -1 and then do a do loop with that, but going in the negative z direction. And to cap off the z direction, what we'll need to do is then drop the remaining numbers, because we'll do else, which basically goes back to the first line. So if it is equal to 0, we have to drop all the duplicated numbers and then cap off the first if statement. But we're not done. We finished the z, but we need to do the exact same for x. So wherever you see a z, change it to an x. I'll do it here and then show you the resultant. And finally, capping it off with a semicolon. Okay, we're good to go. Now let's check a coordinate which we'll want to travel to. Let's try 370 and -320. It's a short one. So 370, -320, and then we go to. So it'll go down to the Z coordinate first, which will be right here. Then it'll go in the X coordinate, which ends up, it'll be right here. And it's in its proper location. Good. If it's an extended trip, however, you'll have to mess with the delays to see how well it needs to be. Now, raise to. Some people have commented that you can use elevate rather than raise to, but it really doesn't matter. Pretty much what we're going to do is do the same as like the current Z or the current X1, but we're going to do it with Y. So all that this will do, I'm going to keep it raised to, is take a Y value and then raise to or elevate to that Y variable. So we'll just have to use Y. Why else would you do that? Okay, now all the quarry is configured. Now let's try 95 raised 2, and it should raise up to 95, which is 2 increased. Let's lower it back down to 93, and it'll go in its proper location. Now, you'll probably want to save this, so what you'll do is do save, double quotation, and space, then the name, followed by another double quotation. So let's have this as base. So it'll save to the blank floppy that we happen to have in there. Thankfully, we actually have it in here this time. And then it'll be saved. Let's do page and clear the screen. Now, here comes the actual quarry stuff. This stuff will program all of the quarry actions from the breaking of the blocks to the kill switch. This is where you pay careful attention. If you haven't figured out the movements yet, don't even bother with this. So let's start with a few things. The variables. We have a lot of variables. The first variable will basically be its location in the quarry in the X direction. Then the second will be its location in the quarry in the Z direction. Then the max size of the quarry in the X direction, the max size of the quarry in the Z direction, which I have as Y for some reason. That's why. Basically, in the quarry, we have this as like an XY plane. So think of it as some sort of grid, and that's going pretty dang fast. So think of it as a grid, so it's going like this, X direction, Y direction. You can have it as a Z to keep you as not as confused, but this is how I'm going to code it. Change this capital Y to a capital Z if you wish. Now, variable H will be our location, the maximum height of the quarry. So, how many levels you're going to go down. And finally, we have the actual height that the quarry it is at. So, height, which is basically the level that the quarry is currently. So for instance, that's at like, how many levels down is that? Like 20 or 30 currently. It's making it very far. Now that we have all of those variables figured out, we can do some fun stuff which we'll need to do. First, we need to get two very important words down. The kill word and the break word. What we'll first do is the kill word. So, the kill word reads in from the I/O expander what this wire is seeing. So if it's off, we have to show it's off. If it's on, we have to show it's on. So read it and return a Boolean. So gray, in this case, is 128. And then we read in the IOX and compare them by the AND. Then we check if they're exactly equal to each other. If they are, we will return a true. Otherwise, we will return false. And that is the entire kill word. Now, our breakers are triggered by our pink wire over there, which is number 64. So our break word will basically activate the block breakers, wait for a short interval, then turn them off again. So it turns on the pink wire, waits 4 ticks, which is the length of time needed for the block breakers to actually break. So 4 ticks, turn off the block breakers, or the pink wire, and then we're good. Okay, and now we have one more thing that needs to be completed. We need our dimensions word. So when we have this dimensions, basically what we'll have is dimensions in the x-axis, dimensions in the z-axis, and how many layers you're going to fall down until you're going to complete it. So, of course, the first thing that gets taken, let's actually permanently take off the rain because that's annoying. So the first thing that gets consumed is the h. So we take the maximum h and put it in. Now what we do is we divide the y by doing a 5 space / mod, and we'll take the divisor that takes from here and put it in our y variable, and then we'll drop the remainder. And finally we subtract 6 from the x and put it in the capital X variable. Then we close off the word. The bird is the word. Okay, going onwards, we have our dimension words and we have our main words that are required. Now we'll actually go into the Quarry words. It's a many-layered program, so you pretty much have to bear with me with how it's going. So the first one we have is go left. This basically causes the quarry to go left. Therefore, it adds to the x in the x-coordinate system, but it subtracts from the little x, which is the quarry coordinate system, because of how it's set up. So what we'll do is turn on the white wire, wait 4 ticks, turn off the white wire, then we'll break what's underneath it, and then what we'll do is a nice little thing of delay at ticks, and then we'll do light. Finally, we have to, of course, change the coordinates, so we have to change the current x by adding 1 to it. So 1 current x at, 1 current dot x plus exclamation mark. And then finally, since it's going in the negative quarry axis x, we have to put -1 space lowercase x space plus exclamation mark, and then finally we do the semicolon. So now we have to go right. So going right basically does the exact opposite of it. So we do 2 IOX set, 4 ticks, 2 IOX reset, break, delay at ticks, light. Now we do -1 current x plus exclamation mark, and then we do 1 lowercase x plus exclamation mark, and then semicolon. Okay, those basically control it going left and it going right. We don't have any system in place to control how far it'll go in either direction, though that will come with later words. Like I said, this is multi-tiered, so you have to follow closely. Now we're going to be doing go forward. So what it'll do is go in the positive z direction, and it'll go in the positive y-axis direction. Y quarry axis direction. So, but here's the key thing. As you see with our current quarry, way down there, what it does is it goes this way one at a time, then it goes 5 times over here, then it goes the other direction, goes down for this run, but then goes all the way over, goes 5 times, all the way over, goes 5 times, etc., etc., etc. So we have to do a do loop. This time we'll have it all in one thing. So we have 5, 0, do, and now a few things happened. So since it's the magenta wire, no, it's the light blue wire, we do 8 IOX set, wait 4 ticks, 8 IOX reset, break, do the delay at ticks and light, and then what we do, we have to add 1 to the current Z. So 1 current Z plus exclamation mark, but then we end the loop there. At the end of all of those 5 iterations, we then add 1 to the lowercase z. So 1z plus exclamation mark, and then semicolon. So we'll go forward 5 times, adding 1 to it. Now, a smart thing to do would probably be to test these words. So let's go left. Good. Now let's try go right. Huh, that's interesting. It hasn't gone right. So let's check what's the reason for that. One moment. I see the issue of why go right didn't work. I actually put 4 tick instead of 4 ticks. I'm not sure what tick does, but it's not what ticks does. So right now what I'm doing it is rewriting it exactly as it was, but changing tick to ticks, adding the S. But go forward is good, so we can keep that. So now that we have that embarrassment handled, we can now do the go backwards command. It basically does the same as go forward, but instead of going in the positive X direction, we go in the negative X direction. So let's type that out. So go backward. We do 5, 0, do, 4 IOX set, 4 ticks, 4 IOX reset, break, delay at ticks, light, not light, light. Then what we do is we have to subtract 1 from current Z, and then end the loop after that. And finally, here's the kicker, we have to subtract 1 from the lowercase z variable. -1 z plus exclamation mark. So let's try go forward, then go backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then it'll go the other way. Now, I got the dimensions word good, and that's good, so we have to now program in some brains to this. First, we have to do go down, which basically just does break minus y, and since we have all the delays there, we'll then just add 1 to the height. So we do 1 height plus exclamation mark, then semicolon. Now let's wipe it and add some brains to this system. The first word we're going to add is left.f. What this does is basically says continue going left and when you finally hit the edge of the quarry, move forward. So we'll add those programs in. First, what it does, it does a begin while repeat. Basically, it's a different type of loop from the do loop. So we start with begin, and what's between begin and while is a boolean. So start with begin, and then we test kill. So we test if the kill switch is on. Then we take the lowercase x and check if it's 0. And then we do OR. So basically it's the OR type of boolean. So if you have ever done redstone logic, you'll know that the OR gate basically says if either of them true, it returns true. So we basically see if either of those statements is true. Then we inverse that so it turns to NOR. So if either of them is true, it turns false. Both of them have to be false for this to be order to be true, is how you can look at them. So basically, while both of them are false, so if the kill switch is not on and it's not at the edge of the quarry, it will go left. And it will repeat until it satisfies that condition. So until the kill switch is flipped, or it knows due to the dimensions of the quarry that it has hit the side. So that's how the begin while repeat loop works. So now after that finishes, it has to test if the kill switch is on or off. If it's off, it means it hit the side of the quarry and therefore can move forward. So to move forward, it has to test the coordinates of the z-axis of the quarry. So it has to test if it's at the edge of it or if it's not and can move forward. So first, it takes the z and compares it with the limit, and if it's equal to the limit, what it will do is just add 1 to it so that it exceeds the limit. It won't move forward, it will just add 1 to the variable lowercase z, so that the following condition can be looked at. So z plus exclamation mark, then. After that, what it'll do is test whether z is less than that. So we wait for it to compile, and then we do z at, y at, and less than. So then we do if. If it is less than, if z is less than y, it means that it can go forward. And then we do if go forward, then. So it closes off the remaining if statements. And finally, we do a semicolon to end all of that. Now, the right.f is similar to the left.f, but it has a different beginning. So we do right.f. So we begin the same way and test if the kill switch is on. So we do another begin while repeat, but we have different parameters as the beginning. So kill, then we do z at x at capital X at, so we test if it's at the limit of the right side. And then we do our NOR, which is, we have to compare if they're equal first. Then we do OR inverse. Now, while both of those statements are false, we will continue to go right and repeat until that condition is satisfied. Then, like before, we'll have to test if it's terminated due to the kill switch, or if the other one has killed it. If the kill switch isn't the thing that terminated it, we'll do lowercase z at, y at, and basically the same as those last two lines in left.f. I'll just repeat them so that if you miss them the first time, you can just type them out easily. Man, I love editing. Able to cut out long times of compiling. So we still go forward and then do then. And then we do our semicolon. So now we have two more finicky words that we have to do. We have to do left.b and right.b. We'll first start with left.b. Left.b kind of is similar to left.f. Well, the starting is exactly the same. We have to test if the kill switch is off or if it has hit the side of the quarry, the left side. And while both of them are false, we will go left and repeat until that is done. The bottom half is different, however, so you have to pay attention. The bottom half, pretty much, this left.f will continue going this way, and if it's hit the end, it'll go this way, then basically it'll go backwards, then go the other way, if it permits it. So let's go and test. So we have to, once again, test if the kill switch is the thing that killed it. Funny that. So now, we test if it's 2. If it is 2, we'll subtract 1 and bring it to, let's see, we'll do if, let me rephrase that. If it's 2, we'll then subtract 1 from z. However, if it is greater than 2, we still have room to move backwards. Therefore, what we'll do is then do z at 2 greater than, and if it is, we'll go backward. Then. And then we'll end with a semicolon, like we do with all of the other words, unless we're such a horrible programmer we can't even do that. I'm not looking at anyone, no, because that'd kind of be creepy since I cannot see anyone other than my computer screen. Okay, yes, my computer screen is a person. I love it very much. So let's do right.b before I scare anyone away. So it starts the same as right.f. So we begin kill x at equal or inverse while go right, not go tight, go right. I don't want to go tight. Kind of creepy. We'll repeat. Next, we'll have to, once again, test if it's the kill switch that killed it. Then, we do z at, so the final part is the same as left.b. So z at 2 equals if minus z, minus 1, z plus exclamation mark, then, and then finally, we do the final part, which is the bottom line, which is the z at 2 greater than if go backward, then, semicolon. Now we got kind of the mid-level brains of this system. We're going to need to get the final level of brains though, so we'll do our full forward. What this will do is cause the quarry to sense going across, bouncing off the walls, not really touching the walls, but going to the edges, then going forward, going to the edges until it finishes one circuit of the basically one layer going forwards. If you try to use this word otherwise, it'll just go down, which we'll get to. So, full forward. We basically do a different begin. So we have to test if it's at the edge. So begin, kill, z at, y at. So we test if z is greater than, and if the kill switch. If neither of them is true, so while neither of them is true, what we do is something a little more fun. So what we do is take our z variable, and what we do is a modulus. So we take z at 2 / mod, and then we drop the divisor, so we only have the remainder left. We check if it's 0. If it is 0, we'll go left.f. So basically what this does is, in our query, we basically have 1 and 2. So it starts at 1, z equals 1, and then it'll divide that number by 2 and check the remainder. The remainder in this case is 1. Since it is not 0, we'll go right. Then it'll go up, and now we'll add 1 to it, so now it's 2. Z equals 2. It'll do a remainder check on that, divided by 2, check the remainder. The remainder is 0, so therefore it equals 0, and thus it'll go left. It can't move forward because that's not allowed by the program, so it'll still add 1 to it, so it's now 3. It'll lower 1 after we get this done. So now that that's compiled and explained, I didn't even hit enter. So we do if left.f. So we have it check if the remainder is 0. If it's not, however, we'll do else right.f, then, and it'll continue with the repeat word. So it'll continue doing that operation until the beginning, one of those two things at the beginning, whether it's reached the end of this or the kill switch is flipped. And then what it'll do is test if the kill switch is flipped. So if it hasn't been flipped, we'll go down. And then. And finally we end it with a semicolon. So now we got full forward, now we gotta do full backwards. So we start with begin, kill, z at 2, so we do our magical 2, and check if z is less than. And we do our little NOR. So while neither of those two are true, we'll do pretty much the same thing, but instead of left.f, we do left.b, and instead of right.f, we do right.b. So let's do that. So z at 2 / mod. We drop the divisor, and if you do not know what a divisor and a remainder is, okay, so if it's 0, we'll do left.b. Otherwise, we'll do right.b. So we'll have to wait for it to compile, and then we'll be able to add it in. So else right.b, then repeat. So then we do kill 0 equals, if it hasn't been killed because of that, we'll go down, then, and then do our semicolon. So pretty much most of our brains are in this system. It's almost complete. So basically the left.f, right.f, and all those .f's or .b's are the mid-level, more like the low-level words. So the original ones that have the break words in them are basically just movements. The left.f's and those are low-level words. The full forward and full backwards are mid-levels. And now we need to add a high level. First, we'll add some more variables, and I'll explain what these do in a second after I get them done. That was wrong. So variable pre.x, variable pre.y, and variable pre.z. So now we have a word called resume. What this does is basically when you use the kill switch And this is only pretty much used in the event of a kill switch. Kill, 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 kill. Let's stop toggling my toggle. And so basically the resume resumes exactly from where it was and continues the operation that it stopped at. So we start with begin again, and once again begin kill. So this time we check if the height level is correct. So for instance, if it's at the bottom of its big pit, it'll check if it's done. If it's at the bottom, which happens to be level 11 on this, it will then stop the quarry in its tracks and it should be a-okay. So let's start coding that in. So begin kill, and we have to check the height versus the maximum height it can go down. If it hasn't reached its maximum height, or if the kill switch hasn't been flipped, what it'll do is go into another loop. You gotta love loops. Basically, there's kind of 3 loops within each other, I think. No, there's 2 loops within each other. But they're running in tandem. So we take the height at, so we take what level it's at, so divide that by 2, and take the remainder by dropping the divisor. Check if it's equal. So it starts with height equals 0, then it'll go to height equals 1. So right now it's at height equals 0. So first thing it has to do when it starts in this corner of the quarry is it has to go forward by going right, forward, then left, then it has to stop, go down, and then it has to go backwards. When it goes backwards, it's at height equals 1. And then basically every even number, it has to go forward. So if it's 0, the remainder is 0, meaning if it's even, it has to go a full forward. But if it's not, it'll do else full backward. Then repeat. Ooh, that compiled quickly. Now finally, those previous variables, basically what we do is when it's killed, so for instance if the kill switch kills it, what it'll do, or if anything kills it, what it'll do is dump its current coordinates into the system, into these previous variables. So we have pre.x, pre.y, and pre.z. So we have to take the current x and put it in pre.x. We have to take the current y and dump it into pre.y. We have to take the current z and dump it into pre.z. We can use these if you want. You don't need to, but whatever. Now, that's a high-level word. All we have to do is start it by doing start. What the start word does is pretty simple. It basically resets the variables, so the x, z, and height, to the starting variables. So the starting variables are 0 for x, 1 for z, and 0 for height. Kind of how I originally coded it, but whatever. It can be altered, but let's not alter it unless you have a thorough understanding of how this works. So for start, we'll do 0, x, exclamation mark, which encodes x with the number 0. We do 1, z, exclamation mark, and you do 0, height, exclamation mark. And finally, we type in the word resume. So the program resume. But since it's at the start, it sees that these variables are at the start and just starts the query like normal. So there we go. Let's page it, save as our mobile quarry, number 4, and then it will be good to go. Now we have to recalibrate it because of all of our messing around, checking if everything is working. So 370, 93, so 370, 93, and we have, what is it? negative 320. Negative 320, and calibrate it. So we got it calibrated. Now let's destroy some of the grass that we have and put it at layer 90 for fun, 90 raised 2, so it'll just lower it by 2. Now here comes the fun part, which is the testing. What we'll do is a nice we have the dimensions word in it, so that should be good. What we'll do is have a nice size quarry of, let's see, we'll have it 10 by 5, and we'll go down 10. So 10, 5, 10 dimensions, and this is to test it. So our dimensions word should be activated, and this should pretty much allow it to go straight down. So let's start it. It's going at a good pace. Let's kill it to test if that works. It stopped, good. Now if we type resume with the kill switch still activated, it doesn't do anything. Let's reactivate the kill switch, resume it, and see if the dimensions are correct. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so our dimensions word doesn't seem to be completely accurate, unfortunately. So let's kill this and rewrite our dimensions word. I know what's the problem. Dimensions. So we'll basically change the dimensions word. This dimensions word only modifies variables, so it doesn't matter if we modify it at this late stage of a game. It will still function properly. So dimensions, we do the same thing. H exclamation mark, but instead, oh sorry, we're not at that. We do 5 slash mod y exclamation mark drop, but instead of 6 we do 5 minus x exclamation mark. So the 6 basically messed it up. I'm not sure why I had that, but anyways, let's continue it and see how well it continues. So let's just resume it, and it'll continue as it was since our new dimensions word isn't taking effect on this current build. So that seems to be working in perfect order, and this will be the quickest way to bring it down. Now there's probably a quicker way to bring it down, but the only way to do that would be to thoroughly alter the design of this quarry, which I don't think we'll want to do right now. So that's all the time for this episode of our Mobile Quarry Mark IV. If you like what you see, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe to future episodes. Wave Time here, signing off. Have a wonderful day. I can push back, Don you. Oh gosh, I'm gonna die. Oh, before you go, fun fact, the previous query that I had going, yeah, my computer room is toast.